My fiancé texted me. I found someone else. Deal with it. I replied with one word. Finally. Then I shut down every account I had been funding. 3 days later, her lawyer started calling me nonstop. I am 36. I work in finance. I am engaged. Or I was engaged until last week, depending on how technical you want to be. My fiancé and I have been together for years. Engaged for 8 months. Wedding planned for early summer. Venue booked. Deposits paid. Guest list mostly finalized. From the outside, everything looked stable. Inside the relationship, it was more like managed chaos that I kept mistaking for confidence. She has always had a sharp personality. Direct. Cutting. The kind of person who calls it honesty when it is really just impatience. Early on, I told myself that was part of the appeal. She was decisive. She knew what she wanted. She did not sugarcoat things. Over time, that sharpness turned outward toward me more often. Small digs dressed up as jokes. Comments about how my job was safe but boring. How her friends' partners were more exciting. How I should be grateful she chose me. We live together. I cover most of the expenses. Rent, utilities, insurance, streaming subscriptions, groceries. She contributes sporadically when freelance work is good. I did not love that setup, but I accepted it because we were building toward marriage. Or so I thought. 3 days ago, I was at work when I got a message from her. No build-up. No discussion beforehand. Just a statement. She told me she had found someone else and that I needed to deal with it. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just dismissal. Like she was firing a contractor. What surprised me was not the betrayal. In hindsight, the signs were there. What surprised me was the tone. Casual. Almost smug. Like she expected me to react emotionally. Beg. Argue. Ask questions. I did none of that. I replied with one word. Finally. Then I stopped engaging entirely. No follow-up. No calls. No confrontation. Instead, I spent the rest of that afternoon doing something she clearly had not considered. I logged into every account I funded, and I turned them off one by one. When I say I cut off every account I funded, I mean everything that quietly kept her life comfortable without her having to think about it. I did not do it dramatically. I did not announce it. I did not threaten it. I just treated it like an administrative task that was overdue. Our joint checking account was first. I moved my paycheck reroute before the end of the business day and drained my contribution down to the exact amount that was legally mine. I left enough to avoid overdrafts for anything already pending. I am not reckless. I am precise. Then came the subscriptions. Phone plan canceled on my end and ported to a new number I control. Her phone stayed active for about 6 hours before service dropped. Streaming services logged out everywhere. Cloud storage downgraded. The gym membership I paid for froze automatically when the card declined. The car insurance was next. The policy was in my name. She was a listed driver. I removed her. Same with roadside assistance. Same with the credit card she used for emergencies that I paid off every month. I changed passwords on anything tied to my identity. Email, banking, utilities. I did not lock her out of the apartment. That would have caused unnecessary legal noise. I simply packed a bag and stayed with a friend while I figured out the next step. That night, she texted me again. This time the tone was different. Confused. Irritated. She asked why her phone was not working and why the grocery order would not go through. She added a comment about how this was immature and petty. I did not respond. The next day, she escalated. Multiple calls from unknown numbers. Emails accusing me of financial abuse. Messages alternating between insults and attempts at reason. She told me I was overreacting. She told me couples get through worse. She told me I was proving her point about my insecurity. Still, I said nothing. On the third day, I started getting calls from a number with a local area code I did not recognize. Voicemails asking me to call back regarding an urgent matter. Formal tone. Professional wording. That is when I realized she had shifted strategies. She had contacted a lawyer. The voicemail from the lawyer was polite in a way that immediately told me he had only heard one version of the story. He said he represented my fiancée in a domestic financial dispute and wanted to discuss urgent concerns about shared assets and abrupt withdrawal of support. That wording mattered. Shared assets. Support. I called back once. I kept it short. I told him we were not married. I told him there was no joint lease. I told him there was no prenuptial agreement and no written expectation of ongoing financial support. I told him every account I closed was in my name and funded solely by me. I asked him to clarify what legal basis he believed existed for his call. There was a pause. Not a dramatic one. A calculating one. He asked if I would be willing to meet to resolve things amicably. I said I was willing to communicate in writing only. He said his client felt blindsided and destabilized. I said his client had sent me a message ending our engagement and announcing a new relationship without discussion. I said my response was to disengage financially and personally. I asked again where the legal issue was. He did not answer directly. That afternoon, my fiancée sent me a long email. No insults this time. No bravado. She reframed everything. She said she never meant it that way. She said she was emotional. She said I knew she did not mean deal with it literally. She said she assumed we would talk. She said my reaction was extreme and vindictive. She also listed expenses she believed I was responsible for covering until she got back on her feet. Rent, utilities, phone, groceries, therapy. She used the phrase transitional support. Reading that was the moment something clicked cleanly into place. This was not about heartbreak. This was about entitlement. I replied once. Briefly, I said the engagement was over. I said there would be no further financial support. I said all communication should go through her lawyer. Then I blocked her number again. Within an hour, the lawyer called back. His tone had changed. The lawyer called back sounding careful instead of confident. He asked if I had time to talk now. I said no and asked him to email his concerns. He did anyway a few minutes later. The email was shorter than I expected. No demands this time. Just questions. Clarifying questions. About the lease. About the accounts. About whether I had ever promised continued support in writing. About whether any of the wedding expenses were refundable. That shift told me everything. He had looked at the situation and realized this was not leverage. This was noise. Around the same time, I heard directly from her again. She used a friend's phone to message me on social media before I blocked that too. The tone was aggressive again. She accused me of trying to ruin her life. She said I was punishing her for being honest. She said real men do not abandon women when things get hard. I did not respond, but I did take screenshots. I have learned that when someone starts rewriting history, you document quietly. That evening, I went back to the apartment while she was out. I took only what was mine. Clothes, documents, electronics. I photographed every room before I left. Clean. Undamaged. Exactly as it should be. I left my key on the counter. The next morning, her lawyer emailed again. This time, he said his client wanted to explore mediation rather than escalation. That phrase made me laugh for the first time in days. There was nothing to mediate. There was no shared future to negotiate. I replied in writing. I reiterated that the engagement was terminated by her message. I stated that no marriage occurred. I stated that no joint assets existed. I stated that I would not be participating in mediation and that any further contact should be limited to written communication regarding property retrieval if needed. 2 hours later, she lost it. She sent a final email from her own account before I blocked that too. It was long, bitter, accusatory. She told me I was heartless. She told me the new guy would never treat her this way. She told me she expected better from someone who claimed to love her. What she did not realize is that the moment she said I found someone else deal with it, she stopped being my responsibility. The first bill she actually saw was the rent reminder. Not an eviction notice. Just the automated email asking for confirmation of payment. She forwarded it to me with a message that said, "This is due tomorrow, what are you doing?" I did nothing. The second hit was her car. She called a mutual friend in a panic because the insurance app would not load and roadside assistance said she was not covered. She had assumed coverage was just something that existed like air. She did not realize it was something I maintained. By the end of that day, the tone shifted from anger to fear. She emailed her lawyer again, asking what her options were. He responded by asking for documents she did not have. Lease agreements. Shared account statements. Written promises. There were none. The new guy disappeared quietly. I only know because she accused me of poisoning him against her in one of the last messages that slipped through before I blocked everything. I had never spoken to him. He just met the version of her that had no financial safety net and decided it was not his problem. Her lawyer tried once more, this time asking if I would consider temporary assistance to avoid hardship. I replied with a single sentence. There is no legal or moral obligation for continued support after termination initiated by your client. That was the end of the calls. A week later, I heard through someone else that she was moving out. Not upgrading. Downsizing. Crashing with a friend while she figured things out. Selling items she once mocked me for being frugal about. The irony was not lost on me. I canceled the wedding officially that afternoon. Lost deposits. Took the hit. Clean break. Worth every dollar. I did not feel victorious. I felt calm. Clear. The kind of calm you get when you stop arguing with reality and start aligning with it. What she tried next was public pressure. I woke up to messages from people I barely spoke to anymore. Her cousin, an old coworker of hers, one mutual friend who suddenly wanted to check in and understand both sides. That phrase is always a tell. It never means neutrality. It means someone has been given a version that requires reinforcement. She posted vague things online about abandonment and betrayal. Nothing with my name attached. Just enough for people who knew us to connect dots. Strong woman quotes. Posts about men who cannot handle honesty. Stories about rebuilding after emotional abuse. I did not react. I did not comment. I did not defend myself. Silence does more damage to that strategy than any argument ever could. Then she escalated again. She emailed my parents. Not to insult me. Not to accuse. To appeal. She wrote about how much she loved me. How confused she was. How she never meant for things to end like this. How she hoped they could talk sense into me. My mother forwarded the email to me with a single line asking if I was okay. I told her yes and explained everything plainly. No emotion. Just facts. She replied that she was proud of me for standing firm and that my father would have said the same thing. That door closed quietly. The final attempt was legal sounding, but empty. A letter drafted by her lawyer, but clearly driven by her panic. It outlined emotional reliance and implied expectations without making actual claims. It asked again for discussion. I did not respond. 2 days later, the lawyer sent one last email. Short. Neutral. He said his client would not be pursuing the matter further and requested confirmation of item pickup times. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just retreat. The noise stopped after that. Completely. No more posts. No more messages. No more indirect contact. The silence felt different this time. Not tense. Final. Once the noise stopped, I noticed how quiet my own head felt. Not empty. Organized. Like a room after you finally throw out things you kept tripping over. The first change was practical. My expenses dropped immediately. I was spending less without trying. No constant small drains. No surprise charges. No background stress about whether work was good for her this month. My accounts stabilized in a way I had not realized they were missing. The second change was emotional, but not in the dramatic way people expect. I did not spiral. I did not miss her the way I thought I would. What I missed was the version of the future I had already outgrown. Once that was gone, there was nothing to argue with. Friends started asking how I was holding up. I told them the truth. I was relieved. Not because the relationship ended, but because it ended cleanly. No prolonged bargaining. No drawn-out collapse. Just a clear line and forward motion. I replayed the moment of her text more than anything else. Not with anger, but with clarity. That message was not impulsive. It was confident. She believed she had leverage. She believed I would absorb the shock and keep providing stability while she explored options. When that assumption failed, everything else unraveled. That realization mattered. It told me this was not a single bad decision. It was a worldview. I also learned something about myself. I am not reactive. I am responsive. When something breaks trust at a structural level, I do not argue with it. I remove myself from the load-bearing position and let it stand or fall on its own. She told people I was cold. I am fine with that. Cold implies distance. What I felt was alignment. The apartment is gone now. I moved into a smaller place closer to work. It is quiet. It is mine. I sleep better. I wake up without tension. She finally tried to talk to me directly a little over a week after everything went quiet. Not through lawyers. Not through friends. She showed up in person. I was coming back from work when I saw her car parked down the block from my new place. Different car, actually. A borrowed one. She stepped out when she saw me and started walking over like this was some coincidence. Like she had not mapped out the timing. She looked smaller. Not physically. Energetically. The confidence was gone. Replaced with urgency. She started talking before I could say anything. Told me she just wanted 5 minutes. Said she deserved that at least. I told her no. That surprised her more than anything else so far. She laughed once like I was joking. Then she got frustrated. She said I was being cruel. She said we were engaged, and that meant something. She said I owed her a conversation. I told her the conversation ended when she sent the text. She tried to pivot. Said she had been angry. Said she did not expect me to actually walk away. Said she thought finally was sarcasm. She admitted she assumed I would calm down and we would talk it out. That line mattered. It was the most honest thing she said. She asked if we could start over slowly. No pressure. Just talk. Just see where things go. She said the other guy was a mistake. She said she realized what she lost. I told her I was not angry, and that was why the answer was no. I said trust does not reset because circumstances change. I said I was no longer available for reinterpretations of reality. She called me heartless again, said I was punishing her. I told her consequences are not punishment. They are alignment. I walked past her and went inside. I did not slam the door. I did not look back. She texted me later that night from a new number. Just one line. I never thought you would actually leave. That was the point. Watching someone collide with the outcome of their own assumptions is strange when you are no longer emotionally invested. It becomes observational instead of painful. She had assumed security without commitment, support without accountability, presence without respect. When those things vanished, she did not see it as cause and effect. She saw it as betrayal. That told me everything I needed to know about how she moved through life. Through mutuals, I heard fragments. She told people I changed overnight, that I blindsided her, that I was controlling with money. That narrative did not bother me because it required my participation to survive. I was not participating. What stood out most was how quickly she reframed herself as the victim of unpredictability. She never acknowledged the text. She never repeated the words she actually used. I found someone else deal with it became I was honest, and he overreacted. That gap between action and story is where trust dies permanently. I also learned how much peace comes from decisive boundaries. Not threats, not ultimatums, just clear exits. People who benefit from your flexibility will always call boundaries cruelty. There was no dramatic closure moment, no apology that would have changed anything, just a gradual realization on her side that there was no angle left, no leverage, no emotional hook. That is when the attempt stopped completely. I do not hate her. Hate would imply unfinished business. What I feel is distance and clarity. She was not a villain. She was a lesson I paid for early instead of late. Where I am now is simple. I am single. I am stable. I am not confused about what happened or why it ended. That matters more than being comfortable. The wedding money is gone. Deposits lost. I accepted that immediately. Money recovers faster than trust ever does. I consider it tuition. I paid to learn something before it cost me years instead of weeks. I changed my routines, focused on work, reconnected with friends I had drifted from while trying to maintain balance for two people. I did not rush into anything new. I did not need to replace what I removed. The space itself was the reward. She has not contacted me again. Not directly, not indirectly. The silence stuck this time because there is nothing left to test. No soft boundary, no emotional backdoor, just absence. That is the cleanest ending I have ever had. If you are reading this and thinking walking away like this sounds harsh, let me be clear. What ended the relationship was not my response. It was her certainty that she could discard me without consequence and still keep the benefits. I did not punish her. I stopped subsidizing disrespect. Love without respect turns into obligation. Obligation without choice turns into resentment. I refuse to live in that middle space. The aftertaste of this is not bitterness. It is clarity. I now know that when someone tells you exactly how little they value your presence, you should believe them the first time and respond accordingly. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I did not beg. I simply aligned my actions with reality and stepped out of the way. And that was enough.
To me that stood out in one of our DM conversations was you said, imagine if everyone in the world was 5% kinder. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me. I was just like, wow, like, yeah, imagine if everyone was just 5% kinder. Like you weren't talking about, oh, let's make everyone in the world super kind. And, you know, tell me what that means to you and like what made you say that and where that came from.
Well, I don't know if it's the older I get or the more accessible I am to so many people because of social media nowadays and just the technologies in our hand. It just feels really heavy. The world feels really heavy and depressing. And if you read statistics for mental health, bullying, violence, everything is escalated. And I think we're too exposed to too many avenues of people and too many ways for people to connect with us. And